bit. This is let me see if I can move our picture. There we go. So here's the whole test in a nutshell. There are 3 parts to it. There's a verbal, quantitative, and a nonverbal part. And this chart here, whoops, I went there. I didn't mean to go so fast. This chart kind of shows you, depending on what level your child is at, how many questions in each subtest, and about how much time children get to take that part of the test. And it changes as it goes up. There's more questions and you get less time. You have to move a little faster as you get older. Now, for younger students, kindergarten to 2nd grade, the test is actually not officially timed. If it's given as a group test and a teacher is presenting the questions and moving the kids through it, she or he will get an estimated time that the test will take. But it's really not, it's not officially timed. If it takes longer, it's fine. They let the kids go longer. But as you get older, it is timed. From level 9 and above, it will be timed. And from this point on, students read their own questions, although they all do go through some practice questions together with their teacher. From kindergarten to 2nd grade, it's all picture-based except for one subtest, which is the sentence completion subtest. And on that, the teacher has to read each question specifically. So your child really needs to listen, and the question may not be repeated. So the child has to listen and remember what was asked, and then they're going to point to a picture that answers the question. But other than that, all the other parts of the test get one direction, essentially, and then they just move through each question, and the teacher does ask the question each time, but it's the same question for everything except sentence completion. That's the only one that changes, and I'll show you in just a second. So let's go through the 2 batteries for this test, or the 3 batteries for this test. And the first one is the verbal battery, okay? And I'm going to show you how it changes from younger children to older children. You can see that with younger children, verbal battery is all pictures. So the first part is analogies, and for younger kids, they do them with pictures. So, you know, the question is, what goes with a baby the same way that a cage goes with a bird? And so we're looking for what's the relationship between these two, and we want the same relationship here. And this is where a baby stays, and it's a place that kind of looks like a cage. So that's the analogy there. But for older children, the verbal analogies are vocabulary words. So here's an example. Beg is to plead, as ask is to request. So these are synonyms on this particular analogy. And there's lots of different types of analogies, but that's an example of what the questions look like at the higher levels. For sentence completion, and this is the one that is different for the younger students, what they do is they get pictures, 4 pictures, 3 or 4 pictures, and they ask a question. What would you do if you ripped a garment? And to answer these, younger students really need to have a good vocabulary. They need to understand what ripped means. They need to know what a garment means. And then they choose the answer. For older students, it's more of a fill in the blank. Many people use blank sweeteners instead of sugar. And then how do you fill in that blank? And the answer is artificial sweeteners. But you have to have a good vocabulary to do those. And you also have to have good grammar because you have to know what fits as well. But that's the sentence completion part of the test. And then there is something called verbal classification. With younger students, again, it's all done with pictures. With older students, it's done with words. So here we have an example. And the question is, which picture on the bottom belongs with the pictures on top? So the child has to determine what is the same about these pictures. And here we have apple, orange, grapes. They're all fruit. That's how they're the same. And so cherries would go up with them as well. I mean, they're all food as well, but we have to get more specific here because it's all fruit. Now here, with older students, guitar, banjo, harp, the answer here, they are all instruments, but these are individual instruments. So, and they're instruments that have strings. So violin is going to be our answer. So this is the verbal part of the test, okay? And here we're going to go through now the quantitative or the mathematical part of the test. And once again, with younger students, we have pictures. And it's a number analogy. Works just like the verbal analogies and the nonverbal, which you'll see in a minute. But what it is it's a mathematical analogy. And so here we have 3 tennis rackets to 1, which means we subtracted 2. That's what happened. So if we subtract 2 here, we would have 3 left. And look, here's our answer. So it's a mathematical analogy. That's the first kind. And then for older students, it's done with just numbers. So 5 is to 4, 6 is to 5. You have to figure out what the rule is. And we can see here the rule is to subtract 1. So 6 would be the answer here. That's the rule on these number analogies. Number puzzles are like equations. And so with younger children, we have pictures. We'll use either, on our site, we use boats. The test itself uses trains. We use trains too. We have some trains. But what you want is for both sides of the boat to be pulling the same number of boxes or items. So here the boat is pulling 3 red boxes. We need the boat to be pulling 3 red boxes on this side. So we need to add one of these cars here, or boats, I guess you would call it, to where the question mark is. So we need to add the one that has a 1, and then it would be pulling 3, and this would be 3. And then on this side, it's just an equation. Sometimes there'll be an equal sign between, sometimes greater than, less than. In this case, 16 is more than 8 plus 2 plus 1. 16 is more than 8 plus 2 plus what number? So 16 is more than 15, so I suppose A would be the answer there. And then number series is a pattern. Sometimes it's a rule, sometimes it's a pattern. And what you have to figure out with the younger children, it's like an abacus, and with rods that have beads. And so the pattern here is 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. And so this would be our answer. On this side of the number series, you have to figure out, by looking at the numbers, what is the pattern or the rule that they're following. So here they're adding 5 each time. So if we add 5 here, the answer is going to be 27. So that's what the quantitative part of the test is like. And then finally, we're going to look at the nonverbal battery. Okay, so for this one, there's 3 things. Figure matrices. These are just like, more analogies, but they're done with figures. So here, what we have is the same, it looks like the same figure rotates. So if we rotate this same figure on the bottom in exactly the same way, this is going to be our answer. Okay, so that's how that works. And it works exactly the same way for older students, only they are harder, and sometimes there are more changes that take place from box to box. So with this one, it's just a color switch. And so here it goes white, and then the colors just change places. So here's our answer right here. And then paper folding, what this is, it's easier for younger kids, harder for older kids. It's a diagram of a piece of paper that gets folded either in half or sometimes diagonally. Sometimes it's folded again. And you have to decide what it's going to look like when it's unfolded. And in this case, this is our answer right here when we unfold it. And then here, on this example, We fold twice. Oh my goodness! Oh good. I'm glad I put the answer in, because I was going to have to figure that one out. That's going to take a little time. But anyway, so if we unfold this, it is actually going to look like E. That is what it will end up looking like. But you have to practice a lot of these, and then you get used to it, and you're able to figure out, well, what happens when these things fold and unfold. So this is kind of a nonverbal or spatial activity. And then the last type of nonverbal test is classification. And remember, we just talked about that before. So what is the same about these three figures here that have black and red dots? Well, it looks like there's 3 black and 2 red, and there's always a black in the middle and then 2 next to each other. So we have to find one that is the same as these. And actually B is our answer. All the others do have 3 and 2, but they're not in the same sort of configuration as B. And that's what the child has to recognize. And then figure classification here, what this is, and you'll see a lot of these are rotations. Same figure rotated. You just have to recognize that this is the same figure rotated. And the only one that is here that is exactly the same figure rotated is B. These others look the same, but they're not the same. They've got the arrow in a different place. But B is the answer here. Now, what I'm going to do now is I want to kind of take you through a lot of the different types of questions, and I'm going to try to give you some tips on, some common mistakes kids make, and ways to, if you're working with your child, what you might say to them to sort of help them out in figuring these different types of questions out. So let me walk you through some of my tips. And I'm hoping I can get to all my tips tonight. I have so many. I always tend to get excited and I want to give you everything, but I'll give you as many as I can. How's that? Okay, so we're going to talk about the strategy for some of these different types of questions. Okay, so for verbal analogies, here's one. This is tomato, and then we have like a spaghetti sauce, and then we have an egg and different foods. And we know that a tomato is an ingredient of the sauce here. So the egg would be an ingredient of one of these things. So one of the things you want to do is, when you look at this, is teach your child to think of a sentence that describes the relationship between the pictures on top. So you could say, a tomato is an ingredient of spaghetti and meat sauce. Egg is an ingredient of fried eggs. And that's how you can easily solve. You're looking for exactly the same relationship. So you just apply that same sentence to the next box, and that will help you find the answer. So let's look at this one, okay? Now here we have a magnifying glass and a microscope. And you might say, well, a magnifying glass helps me see things better, and so does this microscope. So, okay, so I'm looking for something that helps you see things better on the bottom. But I really have more than one thing that helps you see things better. So I need to get a little bit more specific and precise. And you'll see that a lot with these. So if your first idea doesn't work, you just want to get very specific. So here, if we look at this again, the magnifying glass does help you see things up close, but the microscope even lets you see things even closer than this. So what helps you see things far away, but even better than any of these other things? And that would be the telescope. So the telescope would really be the answer. So remember, if you come up with a relationship and it doesn't work, go back and try to be a little more specific. Now, some of the most common mistakes that we see on these is that a lot of times students will just ignore the relationship between the first 2 words, and they might just choose something that is related to one of these words. and it's not necessarily the right relationship. Like, here they might pick flowers because potpourri is often made from flowers. But the answer is really, it's going to be fragrant because music is melodious. So it's enjoyable. You hear it as sort of a more general term, and potpourri is always fragrant. And that's really the answer. So here, you really have to make sure that you're looking at that relationship and that it works on both sides. Now, if your child has trouble with these types of analogy questions, I just want to tell you, you can go to our classes pages, testingmom.com/classes, testing. And there is a webinar on solving analogy problems. I literally spent an hour on this, talking about all the ways to do this. And I give you tons of material. So if this is hard for your child, then watch this workshop, and that will help him or her get better at it. And I wanted to just point out, and this is an example, I'm using the analogies here, but I want to point out something that applies to all tests and the whole test, which is sometimes it's going to appear that there's more than one answer choice, but you're always looking for the best answer choice. So here's an example. Granny Smith apples are to Asian pears as a polar bear is to what? And we've got the North Pole, blackberry, seals, and the Arctic wolf. Well, really, polar bears are animals that live in the Arctic. And these are both different types of fruit. So, but we don't have another bear, but we do have two animals that do live in the Arctic. So either one of these potentially could be the answer. But you see how specific these fruit descriptors are. Granny Smith apples, Asian pears, polar bear. We're looking for a very specific type of animal that lives in the Arctic, and that would be the Arctic. So that is our best choice. So I want you to remember that we're always looking for our best choice. You're going to sometimes see choices that could work, but they're not the best. You have to find the best one. The other thing is you have to watch out for distractors. And distractors are words that, for example, and blackberry is a distractor because we've got two fruits here. So they'll throw in a blackberry for someone who's not really paying attention, and they'll think, oh, it's fruit. And they'll just answer with fruit. So you've got to watch out for those distractors. And what you want to say to your child is that the people who put these together, they like to trick kids. And no child likes to be tricked, but that is true. They're trying to trick you. So you don't want to be tricked. You have to really be careful about these distractors. So make sure you look at all the answer choices before you decide. So this applies to everything, all the tests, but I wanted to show it to you here because it does happen all the time. Now let's look at some verbal classification questions, some strategies here. So remember here, the things on top belong together for some reason. And we want to find something on the bottom that belongs on top for exactly the same reason. So if you look at the things on top, you can come up with a rule that describes what is the same about these three pictures. And the thing that's the same about them is that they are all representative of 5. We've got 5 people, 5 cents, 5 fingers. So we need a 5 down here. And we have the number 5, and that is going to be our answer. So with a rule like that, there was only one thing that fit. So there we go. We've got the answer. I want to just show you how sometimes you're going to see some where there more than one rule or more than one answer might fit. So you do have to get more specific. Here, everything up here is something with transportation. So you might be looking for something with transportation, but 4 answers are transportation. So we need to get more specific. So here, it's transportation with wheels. That's something that's the same about all of them. And this one, the third answer, is transportation with wheels. And so that would really be our answer. And it's the same thing, for older kids, except it's going to be done with words. And so some of the common mistakes that kids would make might be that here they'll see something and they'll just pick something that reminds them of something on top. And so they'll pick a coin. So that might happen. Or another common mistake in with one like this is kids tend to pick the category, but not something that fits into the category. These are all instruments with strings, and so violin is really the answer. But a lot of times people will pick the category. And when I first started doing these myself, I would pick the category. So it's such a common mistake. So, the great thing is if you're practicing and you see your child make this mistake, you guide them into, talking through what they're really, really looking for. Okay, so here we have sentence completion. And so we looked at this one before. What would you use if you ripped a garment for younger kids? So with younger kids, the big thing you want is for them to just have a good vocabulary. And you'll get that through reading. If you read together and talk about word meanings all the time, they should be in great shape for this part of the test. But you can also teach them that they can use logic if they aren't sure about what a word means. So for example, if you don't know what ripped or what garment, or let's say here, you're more likely not to know what garment means. You might know what ripping means, right? We all kind of know that one, but garment, maybe not be sure about that. So if you do, if you know that this has to do with getting ripped, you can probably, and the question is, what would you use if you ripped a garment? And you wouldn't use lipstick. That just doesn't make any sense for a rip. You probably wouldn't use a nail for a rip. You might use tape or you might use a needle. So you could at least guess between a needle and thread and tape. So you can use your logic to try to come to an answer. And for older students, it's really the same thing. So first, what I recommend is just read the sentence. And you might even think about your own word that you think would fit. Because of the harm caused to dolphins, we are going to something that brand of tuna, not buy. That's what I would say, because they harmed something like that. Well, the boycott does mean not buy. But if you don't know what all the words mean, and maybe you don't know what boycott means, but even if you don't, you can look for signaling words. Like harm is telling us that we're looking for kind of it's negative and there's a solution we're looking for. And you certainly, if the dolphins are being harmed, we wouldn't be eating the brand or dining on the brand or buying the brand. So it's probably going to be boycott or broil. Well, broil, probably not broiling. So that might help you find the answer if you look at it that way. Other kinds of signaling words to look for on these is words like but or however or although, because if the sentence has that in it, that means there's going to be a change of direction. If the sentence has words like furthermore or indeed, then remember you're going to be looking for more support or elaboration. So you got to practice them and you'll see what I'm talking about. The other thing is that these sentences have to make sense grammatically. So on this one, we are going to dine that brand of tuna makes no sense. So we can definitely take that one out. And also, if you see two synonyms in the answer choices, and they mean exactly the same thing, that's a big red flag that neither one is going to be the answer. So we know eat and dine mean the same thing, so those are not going to be the answer. So you can use logic to help you find these answers. And when you practice, just remember some of these strategies that we're talking about here. On this one, these are number analogies. And here we have one for kids. There's 3 bowls of dog food, and then there's 6. So we added 3. So let's try to add 3 dogs to the bottom and see if we can find the answer. Oh, let's see, we have 1. If we add 3, we need an answer that has 4 dogs. But there's no answer with 4 dogs. So we have to come up with something else. The other thing that happened here is that 3 doubled. It became 6. So what happens if we double the dogs? 2. There's our answer. So sometimes the first thing you try doesn't work, but you try something else. With number analogies, these are some of the common mistakes that kids will make. Let's see, 12 is to 4. They might try subtracting, but then if you see here, 15 is to 5, 18 is to what? Well, it looks like we divided by 3 every time, you know, but sometimes kids might see 12 is to 4 and they'll think subtraction and they'll just go to 8 and they'll pick 8. So you have to make sure you look at everything to really try to figure out what's going on. And just remember that they do get harder at higher grade levels. You'll start to work with fractions and decimals and things like that. So you have to have pretty good math skills to figure these number analogies out as well. But you know, you just have to try to discern what the rule is. And I do have a whole workshop on this one too, if it's hard for you, for your child. The other thing we're going to talk about a little bit is some of the number patterns for younger kids, and then I'm going to tell you some things about older kid number patterns. With little ones, there's really 3 of the most common to look for. So here's what they are. Some look like this. It's like an AABBCC or ABAB type pattern. You can immediately see the pattern, and you know, you just look for what goes along with the pattern. This is AABBCC, and so this is our answer. Sometimes it's mathematical. With this one, we're subtracting 3 each time. So this is our answer right here. And then sometimes, and you've got to learn these, and this will take some practice. If it doesn't make sense to you from rod to rod what's going on, what you want to do is look at alternating rods, because sometimes the patterns are 2 different alternating rod patterns. So here we have 3, and then here we add 1, it's 4. Here we add 1, it's 5. And then here we're subtracting 2, 1, and then this is going to be 0. So here's our answer. So there are alternating patterns, so you need to know to look out for those. My suggestion here is just practice several, as many as you can, so that you know what to look for and you can recognize what's going on. The biggest mistake children make is they look at the change between one, you know, just one rod. Like here we subtracted 1, so they might decide here, well, let's subtract 1 and this will be our answer, and that's not our answer. So you have to kind of look alternating, because you've got to look for that whole pattern, okay? With older kids, and I am not going to go through all the details here, but what I want to say is I want you to practice these. These are number series. And remember, with number series, it's just numbers and then what comes next, right? There are different types of patterns. Arithmetic is one, which is where you're adding or subtracting between the numbers. And in this case, we're adding 5 each time. Geometric is where we are dividing or multiplying. So here we're multiplying by 7 each time. This one is multiple operations. We times 2 and plus, we times 2, and then we add 1. So 2 times 2 plus 1 is 5. 5 times 2 plus 1 is 11. 11 times 2 plus 1 is 23. So sometimes it's like that. Then there's the alternating pattern, which we just talked about. And it's exactly the same for older kids, but it's just with numbers. And then there's something called the cyclical pattern, which is the numbers literally are being moved around in a cycle. The 2 here becomes the first number. And then the 3 becomes the first number. And then the 6 becomes the first number. And then there's random patterns, which can be almost anything. So what I recommend for this, number series questions can get tricky. We do have on the site, go to testingmom.com/classes, how to solve mathematical patterning and serial reasoning questions if your child has trouble with these. If they don't, some kids are great. They are able to figure them out. They're really good at math, and it's sort of very intuitive for them. Other kids struggle a little more with this. And so if your child is struggling at all, just go here and you can literally watch an hour where I talk about these number patterns and sort of how to solve them. But I just want to give you some of the strategies today, just so you kind of know what to expect. And the reason you have to practice, as you can see, is because there are so many different types of questions. So you just have to be able to recognize any of them as they come up. Now, for the number puzzles for younger kids, remember, we're just trying to make these the same on both sides. So you just have to, count what's in the first train or boat, figure out if you're adding or subtracting. And you sometimes have to subtract. Like here, this is 2. And then this one, if you see there's X's on top of the items, like we have to subtract 3. So we're going to subtract 3 and we're going to have 4 left over once we subtract 3. But how do we get to 2? We have to subtract 2, and that's our answer right here. So you just want to, make sure you practice these with your child, and your child does have to know basic addition and subtraction in order to be able to do these. And with older kids, a good trick is when they look like this. A lot of times the question's going to look like this, where at the bottom there's a symbol and it means a certain number. You want to make sure you work from the bottom up. And so you know that you're going to put 27 here. So 27 minus 10 is going to be 17. So what plus 3 is 17? The answer is 14. So you work from the bottom up. So make sure you show your child how to do that. And a lot of times with younger kids, they just pick something that looks like what's on top if they don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. So it's really important that they understand what they're supposed to be doing here. Now I want to talk about figural problems. I want to make sure I get through as many of these as I can. These I love. These are like puzzles. And these are analogies, as we've talked about. Remember, we already talked about this one, which is the colors switch here. So we're looking for one where the colors switch here. And there it is. So what you have to do in order to solve these is first you look at the first 2 figures and you try to come up with what's the rule that describes the relationship. You apply that rule down here and look for an answer that, if you applied the rule, it would be the right answer. And of course, that's here. Now, there are 10 very common types of analogies. And this is what they are. Here is the list of 10. Again, I keep telling you about other webinars to go to, but if your child has trouble with these, you can go to this webinar and really learn the 10 types of analogies. But what happens, the analogies are the figures stay the same. There's a change in color or shade. That's what we have here. There's a change in quantity, like, 1 circle to 2 circles. There's a change in size, small circle to big circle. Change in shape, maybe something with 3 sides, a triangle becomes a square. Piece can be added or taken away. Pieces move or they switch positions. They rotate. There's a mirror image, or there's an overall design that the puzzle makes. So those are all the 10 types of most common changes you will see with these types of questions. If you practice enough, you will learn these. And if you're on Testing Mom, we have questions that cover every type of analogy change that I'm talking about here. So you want to teach your child these 10 common analogies so they know to look for them. And then when students get older and they're in higher grades, what tends to happen is that there's more than one change in the analogy. So it might be we're going to have a change in color and quantity, or a change in size, and there's a rotation. I mean, and sometimes there can be 3 changes as they get older, and even 4. So, but you want to start by practicing the easiest questions so you really learn these rules, and then you can work your way up to harder ones. And one of the nice things about being on Testing Mom is you get access to everywhere from our kindergarten questions, to our higher level questions. But if your child has trouble with these, just go back to easier questions and start with those, and they'll get better at them. Then we have the paper folding questions. And here's 2 examples that are, from easy to very hard. And you have to really imagine what's going to happen to this paper after it gets unfolded. What is it going to look like after we punch these holes and we unfold it? So, some of the things you want to do is you want to practice. You want to start with easy ones and work your way up to harder ones. And just remember that every time you fold the paper and put a hole in it, then that doubles how many holes you're going to have when you open it. So if you fold it once, there's going to be, on 2 sides. If you fold it twice, then you're going to start to get more and more. There's going to be 4. 2 folds will give you 4. You're going to have double. So once you kind of get used to what happens, then you start to understand what to look for. We do on our website have a folding question game where you can actually see we animate the question. So you can actually see the piece of paper getting folded and then the hole getting punched in it, and then you unfold it and it shows what happens. And it's actually a game, and it's really fun. And so it's something I recommend that you do with your kids. And then for the classification questions, these, if you learn those 10 analogy rules, they'll be helpful to you here, actually. But you have to look at, what is the same about these? And the thing that is the same here is this is the same figure rotated. And the minute you see one like this, you know it's a rotation question because it's the same figure, in all different ways. And you just have to be able to recognize that it's the same figure that's being rotated. So B is our answer if you were to rotate the same way that these are. These are not, the others are not the same. This is another one. If you see a question that looks like something like this, and then you see answers that look something like this, you're going to almost know that this is a how many sides does the figure have question. And so what you want to do immediately when you see something like this is count the sides. And these are all 7-sided figures. So we're just looking for one that has 7 sides here. And A actually has 7 sides. This one, we talked about this one before. And this is an example of where you think, oh, well, the answer has to have 3 black and 2 reds. Well, they all have 3 black and 2 reds, so we need to get more specific. So the specific answer is black in the middle and then 2 next to each other. And that makes B the answer. And then this one, the minute you see this, you know, rotation. This is a rotation. Same figure rotated. So we just have to figure out which one here is the same figure rotated, and A is our answer. And by practicing a lot of these, you will get so much better at these. And I would say to encourage your child to talk through each, different one, like what is the same about it? Because if you're talking it through in your head, you will figure out what is the same about it. And I love these. They're like little puzzles. They're really fun to do to try to figure them out. They're real brain teasers. Okay, so everybody, I know many of you are Testing Mom members, but I want to show you where you can go on Testing Mom to get practice questions. And we're going to talk to you about all the different resources we have to give you for this to help your child get ready for this test. But the first thing is you should be a Testing Mom member. And once you are, you just go into the website. You can choose for the CogAT test, set it up so you go right to the CogAT test. You'll go to that page and you can see that we have, oh my gosh, we have over 4,000 practice questions, lots of practice questions. So you can practice them just online, where you just look at them and you can print them out if you want to, or you can just point to an answer. We also have interactive questions and questions in every category. I mean, so this is a good place to work, because you can work each type of question. And again, I always recommend that you start below your child's grade level and then work to your child's grade level and then above. Other resources that we have on the site, we're going to go across here. When you're in the website, you go to interactive games. And if you go to interactive games, you're going to get all these different games here. So for younger kids and older ones, the folding questions, here's where they're animated. So you can go there and they can do the animated folding questions. At Digital Tutor, they can practice CogAT questions and you'll see their score. And you can watch them get better and better as they practice, if you want to do it that way. At IQ Fun Tree, you can work there and work on analogies and figural and nonverbal questions here. And then Analogy Galaxy, you can work with picture analogies. And then we have something called IQ Fun Pack board game, and we actually are out of the board games, but we have put the questions up. And so you just click right here, and then when this comes up, you hit practice questions for tests, and then you go to CogAT. And we have pre-K to second grade questions up here, and it's more like a game. So that makes it fun for younger kids. And then we have our Skill Building Academy. So this is something that you get as a Testing Mom member. It's free with your membership. So go there. If your child needs help with math, I'm just pointing out, these are all some of the math, Reflex Math, Dreambox Math, Smart Math, ScootPad, and Study Island all have math. Loop Math, there's lots of math here. So if you want your child to work on their math skills, they can. They can also work on their vocabulary with Big Universe and Study Island, and ScootPad has vocabulary. Here Builder has listening and remembering. So these are all things you could do to build school skills that you need to do well on this test, and also just to help your child with school. The other thing that we have is, let me see, we actually have these, you can go on Amazon, we have these flashcards for CogAT. So your child can do flashcards and practice that way. That's another way to do it. Just go to Amazon and look for Testing Mom CogAT flashcards, and you can have those. And I'm going to let Case tell us a little bit before I get to your questions, and then I want to get to your questions. But I do want Case to tell us a little bit about these are the upcoming camps. And Case, I think you have to unmute yourself. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the upcoming camps, and then we'll talk about some of the tutoring that we have that could also be helpful.
Absolutely. So we've got some really, really fun and exciting classes coming up this week, as you can see on the screen, and then on the Testing Mom homepage. It will also take you to a list of the classes that we have available. And we're doing anything from a fun singing, cooking class all the way to advanced CogAT work, kind of like what we've been talking about tonight. And a lot of the clients that we've been working with have taken 2 or 3 of these classes, and they really enjoy interacting with each other. And some of them are based on different sections of the CogAT for different age groups, and there's all kinds of fun stuff coming up. And they last about a week. They're 1 hour a day, typically around the same time each day. And there's about 5 to 10 kids in each class, so they get pretty individualized attention. And they jump right into the work, and everybody's really been enjoying it. And it's done with actually some of our instructors who do our private tutoring as well, so they kind of go hand in hand with each other. We have Kara and Hope and a few of the teachers running these programs, and they do sessions on the side. And in our private sessions, Karen's done a really good job at creating this.
This is our. You mean private tutoring here?
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I was kind of
Mm-hmm.
kind of blending into that as well. So we have a ton of content that we use, and in the very beginning we do a diagnostic assessment to see exactly where your child stands in the 3 different sections of the CogAT, and then from that we create completely customized curriculums based on those areas of strength and weakness that we find, and we'll go through and we'll cover everything on the test, but we'll put a little more emphasis on those areas that need the most work, and we also focus on the test taking skills as well. So we've got a lot of really good opportunities for that, and I'll give it back over to Karen.
All right. Yeah, if you're interested in either the camps or tutoring for your child for this test, we've got it. And as Kay said, it seems very helpful, especially if kids are having trouble with any particular type of question. Our teachers are so good at giving them all kinds of tips and strategies to use to figure those out. So I do want to answer a lot of the questions that you asked. So let me get started on those. So let's start with the first one, which is Lisa, who's talking about how her children are going into kindergarten. They're going to be taking level 7 for first grade. They're going to take level 8, and for second grade, level 9. It's very hard to get into the program. Yes, the CogAT gets harder by grade. And she says, I just feel hopeless because there's no way. That's not true. There is a way to get in. She says there's no way to get in, but don't feel hopeless. We help kids get 99s all the time. She says that you have to get a 99 to get in. If you get a 98 percentile, you won't even get in. It's very competitive. And her district is against taking classes or getting trained on how to take the CogAT. How do I respond to that? Well, here's how I respond to it. Yes, schools never like you to prepare your kids for any of these tests. They want kids to go in cold and figure it out, and that's how they qualify. And, all I can say is I have teachers who use this for our program for their kids, and they tell us that they've seen so many kids who deserve to be in gifted programs but who don't get in because they're seeing all of these types of questions for the first time, and they're just confused about what to do. And so, everything we do is we teach your children how to approach these types of questions. But when they go in there, they are going to not see any question that we have worked with them on. We don't know the questions that are on the actual test. Our questions are our own. So your child is just going to have to use the strategies and the tips that we've taught them to answer every question on their own, but they will be in such a much better place to be able to do that and show their best self by having done some preparation. And given the thousands and thousands of members we have who prepare for this test across the country every year, and the emails we get, oh, my child made a 99, thank you. I just feel very strongly that as long as you don't show your child, you would never want to show them the actual test, but if they know how to do an analogy, or they know how to analyze a classification question, or they know how to figure out a sentence completion question when they don't know what the words mean, but they know how to get to the answer. I want kids to know how to do that. And people tell us that when we work with them on these tests, they do learn skills that their kids use for tests for the rest of their school career. So, I certainly, if your school tells you not to do any kind of preparation, I wouldn't talk to them about the fact that you do preparation, but I promise you, there are kids at your school district, they're all preparing. They do. I mean, kids all over the country prepare. There's lots of materials to help kids prepare. But the main thing is you never want to expose them to the real test. You just want them to know how to think through everything, and then they can go in and do their best. So this mom is saying, or my daughters will be 7 in September, going into first grade. What form would apply to them? Well, it probably is going to be CogAT Form 7. You'll sometimes hear about CogAT Form 7 or Form 8. They're the same thing. It's just they give the schools different questions at the same level. So it'll be CogAT Form 7, and if they're going, if they're in first grade, they'll be getting level 7. So you could start by practicing kindergarten questions and then work on the first grade questions. And if your child can do second grade questions without, feeling frustrated, do second grade questions. They'll be harder. And then when the test comes up, it'll feel easier for your child. So that's really what I recommend. And remember, most of these questions are not about things they learn in school. It's more thinking kinds of questions. So that's why sometimes you've got kindergartners who can do very advanced for especially like nonverbal questions because they're just really good at that. It's really not what you learn in school. So here, can the test be taken independently to see where the student stands every year versus just preparing for the exam and taking it? And is there a sort of certificate given for our classes? First of all, if you would like, I don't think you could go anywhere. I don't know where you could go to actually get the real test. And I wouldn't really do that anyway, because you might risk exposing your child to the real test, and then they take it and they've seen it. So I would never want to do that, and I just wouldn't. So, but one thing we can do is if you do work with our tutors, the first thing we do is we give your child an assessment and we give them questions that we've developed at the right levels to see what they have trouble with and what they don't have trouble with, so we can tell you right away what you need to work on. I don't know if we give certificates in our classes. That's a good question. I don't think we do, but maybe we should. If kids would feel good about that. I like that idea. Anisha wants to know, with the pandemic, will the format of testing change? Would it be administered online versus in person? Every school district is going to have to make their own decisions about that. And I have a feeling it's going to be similar to the way school districts across the country have been dealing with how they're handling school, which is different all over the country. So I don't know the answer to that in your school district. So it's something you'll have to check with them when your kids go back to school. Okay. Is there any difference? Are there any different tests to get into math, gifted and talented, and English, gifted and talented? It depends on your school district. Every school district gives different tests to get into gifted programs. CogAT is one of the most commonly given tests. Sometimes it is given along with, let's say, a state test, which does cover math and English, or ELA types of skills. And then they look at all three scores, and you might get in, and it depends on the program that your school has. They might have only a math GT and only an English GT. In some cities, it's one program and it's only the CogAT, or it could be, it's just different from district to district. So I can't tell you about your particular school district. You might try calling our parent success team. Just call when you go to the Testing Mom website. There's a phone number there. We can look up your school district and see if we can help you to identify what they're going to do in your school district, because sometimes it is a combination of more than one test. Do we have to register for the test ourselves, or will it be given to everyone at school? Check with your school district. Again, it totally varies by school district. Ask your school. You say, if you want your child to be considered for the gifted program, you find out, there's probably a gifted coordinator, or you can go. What I tell people to do is you can Google your school district, like New York City gifted and talented program test. And often all the requirements will come right up, and they'll say you have to go to this website and you have to register, or they'll say tell your child's teacher. I mean, every school district does it differently. So the way to find out is to ask your child's teacher, if there's a gifted coordinator at your child's school, ask that person, or go on your school's website, do the Googling that I was talking about. Or what I was saying is call our parent success team and they'll try to help you figure it out. But there's usually a group of actions you need to take to get your child registered. What level of CogAT is given to a rising third grader? Well, if they're in third grade when they take the test, they'll get level 9. If they're still in second grade and when they take the test, they'll get level 8. So it just depends on what grade. If they're just starting the third grade, probably they would get level 9. Because remember, it's not what they've learned in school. It's a test that is looking for gifted kids, so they'll probably give the third grade level, even if it's done early in the year. And that's why I say practice the easier ones, practice your grade level, and then maybe practice a little harder as well if you can. Okay, can you please state the location of the webinar for analogies? Yes, I sure can. For analogies, let me put it right here. There it is. For verbal analogies, this is where you go. Go to testingmom.com/classes, testing. And the secret to solving analogy questions, part 1, verbal analogies. Part 2 is nonverbal analogies. So you might want to watch that too. Is seal a distractor in this one? Is seal a distractor? Yeah, kind of, because it's not the right answer, but it's close to being the right answer. So that would be considered a distractor as well. Yeah, this is kind of a hard one, and they do get hard. You really have to think about it. You're going to sometimes think, oh my gosh, that's just as good of an answer, but you've got to really think about it. These are very specific. We need something very specific. So that would be a distractor. Yeah. Will these slides be emailed to us? No, they won't. But you can go, like I said, we're going to put them up on testingmom.com/classes under testing. It'll take about a day, and it'll be up there, and you'll be able to download them if you want them. Okay. How do I identify a gifted and talented middle school outside of my district? My daughter is entering 5th grade in the fall. That's something that if you, what I would do if outside of your own district, every school, like I said, every school district, every city has so many different rules about, finding a program for your child. It is going to totally depend on where you live. And so, and they may or may not allow you to get a variance to go there. What I would say for a question like that is you might want, if you're really serious about trying to find something, you might want to have like a one-on-one consult. If you're a Testing Mom member, you can have one with me or with Michael, my partner, and we can sort of guide you. If you're a member, I think we charge for those, but it's half the price if you're a Testing Mom member. But you could get that if you wanted to really talk through with one of us. Or talk it through with somebody in your school district, or that's a very long conversation because this is not as easy as me giving you a quick answer on that one. Is the CogAT for the gifted test or the WIPSI 4? Again, it depends on what school district you're in. The CogAT is a very commonly given test for gifted programs, gifted and talented programs, and it's a group test. So they're able to give it to lots of kids at once. The WIPSI is given one-on-one by a psychologist. And some schools actually require it for their gifted program. It depends on where you live. So depending on where you live, that would determine what the test is. This is an actual IQ test. And this is considered an ability test, but it's like an IQ test, but it can be given as a group. If the school doesn't offer the test, can you self-enroll? You may be able to do some self-enrollment for some tests. I don't know about the CogAT. I've seen for people who homeschool, sometimes there are places you can go to get some tests, but I've never seen where you could go get the CogAT on your own. Usually it's given by the school. Can you please tell us, yes, oh yeah, the webinars. Webinars again, someone wants the webinars again. Let me just go back. Just go to testingmom.com. Oh, here it is. Testingmom.com. Go to camps, or let me just do the other one, which is testingmom.com/classes. That's and this is where you'll find under classes. That's where you'll find the webinars. Okay, let's see. Is this a test that can be taken a few times and the best score is released? Who sends the? Usually it's a test that's only given once a year by most schools. It's usually taken at your school, and the school gets the scores, and then they'll have to share those with you. Is there a spot on Testing Mom where they can take a full CogAT to see what they're good at, what they need to practice? I'm not sure if we have a practice test up for the CogAT. We have practice sections up for every section. So what I would do is, if you just want to get a sense of how your child will do on each type of question, is maybe go to your child's grade level and do 3 or 4 of each type of question and see how your child does. And that will tell you how they're going to do. The other thing, like I said, you can do an online assessment with a teacher who will literally, we do have online assessments where we give them, but even then we don't give the whole test because it's a very long test. It takes a long time to do this test. But what we do is we give you a little bit of each type of question to get a sense of how you're going to do on every type of section of the test. Okay. Will the teacher explain the question at the kindergarten level, or will they just show a picture and the kid needs to know and read the question? They will go through some sample questions. Oh, and I realize I've just gone over. I'm so sorry, you guys. I may not get to all of these questions. Let me go for, if you guys are okay, I'll go for a few more minutes and answer some more of these questions. I'll answer as many as I can. If you don't mind going an extra 10 or so minutes. Okay, so yes, they will explain it and they will demonstrate it, and then they have the kids go through each type of question. So that's how it's done. They demo it, and then they'll read the question. If they're doing it in a big group, they'll read it, and each child will go through and they'll make sure everyone's answered, and then they'll go to the next question. How much time do you recommend the child practice per day or per week? It really depends on how your child is doing with the different types of questions. If they're really good at some of the questions, you don't need to practice too much. If they're struggling, for me personally, when I first started working with all these kinds of tests, I had a lot of trouble with the nonverbal. That's me. Your child may be great at those, but need more work on the math. So what I would say is, if you could, depending on when the test is, you want to get a sense of how your child will do on each type of question, and then you sort of give yourself time to slowly practice, if it's way into the future, 15 minutes a day, work on a couple of, each type of question so you get really good at them. But if it's closer, you'll have to spend more time getting ready. Okay, so is CogAT and the Gifted Kid test the same? Well, the CogAT is the name of of one of the gifted tests that is given to get kids into a gifted program. There are many others, and schools use a test called the CogAT. There's an ALSAT. There's an NNAT. There's lots of different tests, but this is a very commonly given test. The gifted program is, your school probably has a name for it. It's the Gifted and Talented program, the GT program, but that's just the program itself. Where do I sign up for the CogAT? You do that when you're ready for your child to take it through school. So that is what you do. Just do it through your school if it's going to be given at your school. What is the paper folding game on Testing Mom called? Here it is, right here. It's called folding questions, right here. Go to interactive questions, right here, and this is our our folding questions that are animated. Okay, so my child is in a public. Let me look at the time. My child is in a public virtual school this year. She did the beginning of gifted testing and received a 97th percentile. Will she have to take it again? She was at the point where they were going to do group IQ tests at the public school. Check with your school and find out what the next step is going to be. They may not know yet, just because so many things are up in the air with testing and with schools in general this year, but find out, what's their next step. If she was at the point where sometimes what they do is they'll give a CogAT, and if a child does well, then they'll give an IQ test after that. Find out if they're going to take your child to the next step or what the plan is. You'll want to ask. How much time, that you wanted to know how long the test is and how much time. It's look for this tomorrow when we put this up. You'll see this and you'll be able to look and see how long each set of questions approximately are. Remember, from this level to kindergarten to second grade, it is not timed. Do I have levels other than 7 and 8? It's called the CogAT Form 7, Form 8, but the levels are different. The form is just the form of the test, if that makes any sense. It's a little confusing because there's a level 7 and a level 8. But the only tests that kids take are the CogAT Form 7 or 8, and it's the same test, essentially. And then younger kids take level 5, 6. And then level 7 for first grade, level 8 for second, level 9 for third. We have testing all the way up to 8th grade, so we have all of that. For 5th grade students would be probably level 11. When is the next CogAT camp? I think we have some for K to 2. We have some next week. They may have a waiting list, but we're going to add more. So just go get on the waiting list if it's still a waiting list. Do you have anything to add about that case? I heard you guys were going to add more classes for CogAT.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a ton of demand for those, so we are working really hard to get those posted, and they should be up by early next week.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay, great. And someone's asking about a NNAT testing session. Yes, we will do that. And also, if you go to our testingmom.com/classes, we actually did do an NNAT session, so you could watch that here. You'll find it here, so you can get started with that now. You guys, I apologize, but I have kept you 10 minutes past what I'm supposed to keep you. And oh my goodness. So I don't really want to keep everyone so late. Can I give you 5 more minutes? Would people aren't hanging up? I won't overdo it. I'll try to go as fast as I can and answer your questions. Okay. So how far in advance should we start to prepare for the Chicago gifted test? I would say, the farther in advance you start, the better, because you can go slowly, especially with younger kids. You can go slowly, take it easy, gently. You never want to cram for preparing for these types of tests with young children. The PowerPoint, this person wants the PowerPoint. Yes, just go here and you'll be able to download it tomorrow or the next day. How many questions typically do they get wrong to get a 99th percentile? It's going to depend on your child's age when they take the test. It's 99th percentile. So if they're if they're a little bit older, they probably miss fewer. They can only miss fewer to when they get their score, and if they're younger, they can miss a few more. But you can miss to get to the 99th percentile. How do you divide up the learning for the CogAT prep? How much time should you dedicate every day? And we've talked about that. Again, it's going to depend on what is your child really good at. There's no reason to keep working on things they're really good at. If they're good at it, let it go. if they're not, if they struggle or certain things are difficult for them, do lots of practice. And that's how I would divide it up. We've just had such good luck with our tutoring because our tutors are so good at helping kids figure out what they need to learn to do for each type of question and what mistakes they're making regularly. And we can kind of nip those in the bud, kind of show them how not to make those mistakes. But if you're working with your child you just watch where they're making mistakes and guide them in, in their thinking. Maybe put them into one of our classes. That will help. Do we have practice for 15, 16? We go up to grade 9. I think, go up to 8th grade, but I will tell you that our materials for 8th grade are harder than the 8th grade materials. They're really, and the test is exactly the same at the 9th grade level. Actually, I think we might have 9th grade materials. I'd have to look, but you can use our 8th grade materials for 9th grade, and you would be surprised. You may have to back up on some of these sections, like especially the number series. Even if they're a 9th grader, you may end up starting at 5th grade. I'm serious, and working your way up to get better at these questions, because it's just practice, and sometimes you just have to start with questions that are easier because they build on each other to get to those harder questions. So it's so much better to start with the simpler questions, especially like with analogies and nonverbal and all of that. The nonverbal, if you start with really easy ones, the harder ones tend to build on what you learned with the easier ones. So even if you've got a 9th grader, you're probably going to want to start with easier questions and then work your way up to that. But the test doesn't change. The format is the same. Okay, let's see. Are kids gifted naturally, or do we teach them to turn gifted? That's a very interesting question. Most gifted programs across the country are not for geniuses. Gifted programs across the country are for very bright kids. And one of the things that I just find personally that is so difficult is that often kids will, go in blind with no preparation for some of these tests, and they just don't understand what they're being asked to do. I mean, look at these questions and what they look like. If you didn't know what to do or hadn't practiced a few before you saw it, you could not be able to show what you really know just for that reason only. And so what we want to do is just make sure that their natural intelligence will be able to come out when it matters, and they're not going to spend their time being nervous because they don't know what to do and they're going in for a hard test, or spending their time trying to figure out what are they asking me to do. I mean, if you go in and take your first analogy, nonverbal analogy, when and you've never seen one before, a child who's practiced a lot of them will do much, much better than someone else. And you don't want to ever show them the same question, but you just want them to know what to do. So I think that we've never really had anyone come back to us and say, my child got in because you helped them get in, but they can't handle the work. Usually they can always handle the work if they manage to get in, because they have to get in on their own merit. They have to think through every question. Okay, now I apologize, but I do have to stop because I've kept you guys here so long. But if you have questions, you can reach out to our parent success team, and they can answer almost all of these same questions. Just give us, go onto the Testing Mom website, go to the parent and go to our parent success team number, and you can call and they can talk to you about this. They can also, if you can email them, they will answer your questions. If they don't know the answer, they always come to me, and I can answer them. And if you're interested in tutoring, Case really knows so much he knows everything about tutoring. You talk to parents all day long, right, about the tutoring?
all day long, and we're happy to help. And as Karen was saying, these questions are kind of unlike anything the kids have ever seen before. And we do a great job at getting the kids comfortable so they don't go in with test anxiety on the test day, and that they can do their absolute best. So yeah, just reach out to us, and we'd be happy to talk to you about our program.
Okay. All right, so that's it. And I thank you. I know we went fast, but just remember, if you want to watch it, just go here, testingmom.com/classes. You can watch it again, and if you missed anything, and just reach out to us. Here's a number. We'll help you. Thank you for being here tonight. I know it's late in many parts of the country, so thank you for being here today. And we'll see you again at our next webinar. Bye.